Hello, I am Agnieszka Łaszczuk, and I am very pleased to welcome in the studio Ms. Monika Koblak and Mr. Marcin Zaród from the Citizens of Academia movement. Mr. Marcin Zaród is also a sociologist and a physicist. And today we'll talk about Poland's higher education system and the role of academia. So, as it turns out, not only Poland but also other Western countries face student and scholar protests. Students and scholars have protested against the commodification of education. In Poland, there is, for example, the Polish Humanities Crisis Committee, and they criticized the marketization of higher education. In May, students at the University of Warsaw formed the Engaged University Initiative and now fight for more democratic education. So, from your perspective, what are the major challenges which now Poland's higher education system faces?
While results of those protests are somewhat similar in Poland and in other countries, the roots of those effects are somewhat different, because in Poland for the last 20 years, higher education and research system was seriously underfunded. For the last 20 years, the average spending on research and development higher education was below the average for the developed countries. So these marketization problems and international problems of education are mixed with long-time chronic underfunding. So that would be the first effect. The second effect is that we are forced to compete on the international level for the journals, for the international grants, for the European Union projects, without having similar research base due to this underfunding. So we are forced to compete, even though that we do not have the similar basis for such competition.
And how would you define this commercialization of higher education, commodification, or as other people call it, the impact of neoliberal ideology on university practices?
I don't like that kind of very general terms, although they are very catchy during the protests. I'd rather to talk about concrete issues such as standardization of curriculums or rising the fees, for example, for completing master thesis. When I completed my thesis, the fees were much more lower, and I wasn't forced to pay for the extension of my studies. And this was recently changed, and it was one of the causes for the recent protests. So that would be the first idea. And the second problem or second sign of this commodification is rise of the short-term contracts in the academia and lack of stability during the studies. Obviously, this lack of stability is also spotted in different academic systems in the foreign countries, but in Poland, due to this underfunding, we do not have that much, how to say it, when you do not receive grants, you do not have more opportunities to get it. You do not have that much variety of funding agencies.
And Ms. Koblak, do you believe that the Polish academia is in crisis?
Well, when I look at my friends who are also members of our civic movement, the Citizens of Academia, I definitely believe that there are a lot of problems that they have to deal with. And one of them is, I guess, the difference between the situation of young students and young researchers and those who have been working at universities for a very long time. And these young students and young researchers do not have enough incentives and motivation to spend more time researching what they would like to research. So this is a huge crisis when you've got a lot of doubts among young researchers. They do not feel that their situation is stable and secure, which is the major problem. And when you think of all those young researchers that travel to Western countries, they are definitely recognized as very valuable assets and researchers. But you can't really expect foreign researchers coming here to Poland. So there is definitely a problem in the system and in the academia.
And do you believe that the crisis affects only arts and humanities or also so-called natural and formal sciences?
I guess the problem is in the system, in the system of incentives, and in a situation, in the social, let's say, support that is provided for young researchers. And this happens irrespective of the discipline that they represent. When you think of our civic movement, you will see that we represent a lot of different disciplines, and we are trying to define such objectives that will be shared and common for all disciplines. So no, we should not really concentrate only on the humanities.
And this is also supported in the research on the whole system. For example, if you look on the European Union Innovation Scoreboard, you will find that Poland is 4th from the bottom in those rankings. And this ranking is very general, very covering many fields, from academic, from teaching, to the research and development in the industrial sector, to the jobs, to the patents. So this crisis is not only localized in humanities or in social sciences, but in whole research and development system, even beyond the academia. This is called so-called medium wage trap. We cannot compete more with lower wages, but we do not have infrastructure to compete with our science.
You've talked about young researchers in Poland and the problems that they face. To be honest, I have many friends who are PhD students, and they constantly complain about poor employment prospects. So my question is, well, maybe I will add only that the thing is that they have to constantly produce new academic papers and essay and participate in academic conferences and so on and so forth. How big is this problem?
Depends on the scale and depends on the particular unit, but in general about 30 or 40% of the PhD students get pay for their work. The rest are working for free. And obviously this problem is much more larger in humanities or in social sciences, but even in the physical sciences, for example in astrophysics or in astronomy, there are many PhD positions without funding, when you just work for free without remuneration.
And do you believe that a lack of transparency about how universities are run is an issue? Because actually many journalists wrote about this problem.
This is two-way problem, because obviously we still lacking the transparency, and on the other hand we need to move into open science model, open access model, because we have the similar obligations to the society who is funding us. But once again, we do not have, for example, infrastructure for such. We do not have extra money to prepare open access papers. We do not have enough article repositories, or just access to the grammatical corrections, or that kind of, second line support.
You've mentioned...
we could also discuss it on a different level. I think that another issue that should be addressed is that there is lack of mutual trust among scientists and employees of universities. So when you do not have this, when you do not have code of ethics that are followed, you definitely have a problem with transparency and cooperation between different lecturers and researchers.
And I should also add that as a science communicator or popular science journalist or activist, I observe that we in Poland also face similar problems as Western societies, as a systematic distrust in science. For example, anti-vaccination campaigns, or protests against genetic modifications or medical technologies. And when we are facing the same problems as our Western colleagues, there's the same distrust in science, but on the same moment we do not have that much developed science communication, mutual trust, education system, and many other systematic issues.
A few times you've mentioned the funding issue. So for sure there is not enough money in Poland's higher education system, but how much do we need?
During the last 2 or 4 years, the average spending on research and development and higher education is constantly rising, even despite the financial crisis. And our Ministry of Higher Education is very much proud of it, but still this funding is below the average for the OECD. And it should be also added that much of this funding comes from European Union funds, not from our organic funding, not from our budget funding. So this is only temporary funding, and it's not very, how to say it, prospective. So if I would say that we lack about, it would be very good if we have about 1% of gross domestic product spending for science and for research and development, and again, and another 1% for your higher education, science communication, or relationships with or infrastructure problems. And currently we have about 0.7% or 0.8% of gross domestic product.
I believe that if we want to tackle this crisis, we have to first define the goals of higher education. So from your perspective, what should be the idea of university that Polish universities should follow?
Well, there are several issues that we addressed in this Pact for Science that was developed by our civic movement, by the citizens of academia. And I guess among those most important, you will find the increase of the quality of teaching at universities, and also the quality of research, which is, of course, connected to funding. You can't ignore that. Also, among these postulates, you will have more attention paid to the prevention of pauperization of scientific communities. It is very important that they feel that their situation is stable, that they have some future ahead of them, and they can plan this future. As you mentioned, right now, a lot of them work on contracts that are short-term, and they don't really know what will happen after that, right? After the contract will end.
I think that the most visible obligation between academia and society is not only due to a production of abstract knowledge, but providing applicable knowledge for the relevant social issues. One example would be, we are currently having public debate about Gini coefficient or about inequalities in Poland, and we know that we do not have sufficient data. All academics, even professionals, even from our national bank, admit that this is under-researched. And this is one, we have public debate, everyone is interested in this issue. We should have something, but we do not have because we are underfunded. And this is just one example. And another would be, we do not have very good or very long-term sociology of work studies. For example, we do not have very much data about prospects of employment of our graduates. We have single studies, but no long-term effects, no nationwide statistics. So we do not even know what do we not know.
Another thing is also that these should not only be scientific communities that are involved in the debate, but we would like to raise a public awareness of how important science is and universities are, and that they should become kind of centers and hubs of places where you build social and economic capital, locally and globally. So there should be definitely more interest in the society generally in science and significance of science.
You've stolen my question to a certain point.
Sorry
because I wanted to ask why actually the Citizens of Academia movement was established. So what are its goals apart from the ones that you mentioned?
It was established, I think, 3 years ago, and it all started in some cafes and in flats of these founding members of the movement. And there were quite young researchers who decided that, well, they knew each other from different occasions and from different common endeavors, and they decided that definitely there is a huge problem and there should be something done. Which is not a common thing, I guess, because you do not really have a lot of belief in the impact that you may have on the situation. And they wanted to raise this public awareness and start a debate that will get more people involved in this discussion, right, about science. And well, what happened was that I guess their first objectives were not really met, because they thought that it was going to be a massive movement, and it didn't really turn out to be a fact. It was very difficult to activate scientists also, right, within different circles. But still, the major goal is to raise the awareness, to start the debate, and to show that that it's possible, let's say, to define common goals, even though there are some differences between different scientists in different disciplines.
One thing that should be noted is that Citizens of Academia started not as a protest movement, but as a movement for change. We are not protesting against anything, although we do not agree with all of the policies. But our debate is not only connected with our underfunding. We wish to talk about links between academia and general education, or academia and the development of the country, because this is a development debate, not only academic debate. So, in our opinion, we need to discuss science not because we in the academia are underfunded, but because this is a national state debate. This is a public issue.
Yes, I also do believe that the university itself is a major issue for each country. Well, I would like to thank you very much for the interview. I wish you good luck in your debate. So my guests were Ms. Monika Koblak and Mr. Marcin Zaród from the Citizens of Academia movement, and I am Agnieszka Łaszczuk. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.